All right, if you're gearing up for the SAFE MLO exam, you know some topics are just bigger than others. And today we are tackling a big one, RESPA Section 6. This is all about mortgage servicing, everything that happens after the loan closes. Understanding this stuff isn't just about checking a box on your exam, it's about really getting the protections that keep the whole process fair for borrowers.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. We're going to follow a path that makes sense, kind of like we're walking alongside a borrower. We'll kick things off with the absolute basics of what a servicer does. Then we'll get into what happens when a borrower gets into trouble, look at the ways to get back on track, and then wrap up with the really crucial safeguards that have to be in place before a foreclosure can even be considered.
So, first things first, let's just lay the groundwork. What in the world is a mortgage servicer, and what are their most important jobs according to RESPA?
To put it simply, the servicer is the company you send your check to every month. They're the ones collecting the payments. That includes your principal and interest, sure, but they also usually manage the escrow account for your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance. And just remember, this could be the same bank that gave you the loan, or it could be a totally different company they sold the servicing rights to.
Now here's a core rule you absolutely have to remember for your exam. It's all about timeliness. When a servicer gets a borrower's full, on-time payment, they have to credit it to their account that same day. They can't just let it sit on a desk somewhere, because that could rack up unfair late fees for the borrower, and that's a big no-no.
Okay, so what happens when a borrower hits a rough patch and misses a payment? This is where RESPA Section 6 gets super specific, with timelines that servicers absolutely have to follow.
This right here is a perfect snapshot of that required early intervention. By day 36 of being delinquent, the servicer has to make live contact with the borrower. We're talking a real conversation. Then, by day 45, they have to assign a specific person to help that borrower understand their options to avoid foreclosure, what we call loss mitigation. So burn these numbers into your brain, 36 and 45. They're big ones for the test.
And here's another key number to have in your back pocket. Let's say a borrower wants to pay off their entire loan. They'll send in a payoff request, which has a fancy name you might see, and a stop-up letter. Once the servicer gets that written request, a clock starts ticking. They have just 7 business days to respond with the exact payoff amount.
A classic exam scenario. Every homeowner has to keep their hazard insurance active. So what happens if they let it lapse? Well, the lender isn't just going to sit back and let their investment, the house, go unprotected.
This is what we call forced-placed insurance, and servicers have to follow a very strict set of rules before they can do it. As you can see, they have to send a first notice at least 45 days before they even think about buying a policy. Then, a reminder goes out 30 days after that first one. And only then, at least 15 days after that reminder, can they actually charge the borrower for that new policy.
And right here, this is the absolute money shot for your exam on this topic. This forced-placed insurance isn't just a simple swap. It is almost always way more expensive than what the borrower could find on their own. And critically, it only protects the lender's financial interest in the property. It does not cover the borrower's personal stuff or any of their equity.
So, when a borrower is struggling, the whole point of these rules is to try and avoid foreclosure. That brings us to the formal process of loss mitigation, where the servicer is actually required to work with the borrower to find a solution.
These are the main workout options. You've got a loan modification, which permanently changes the loan terms. A short sale, where the homeowner can sell for less than what's owed. A deed in lieu, where they basically hand the keys back to the lender. And forbearance, which is a temporary pause or a reduction in payments to help them get back on their feet.
And surprise, surprise, RESPA puts a clock on this too. If a borrower asks for more details on any of these options, the servicer has to get back to them within 5 business days. And once the borrower submits a complete application for help, the servicer gets 30 days to review everything and give them an answer.
This brings us to a huge protection, the ban on dual tracking. This is so important. A servicer cannot be evaluating a borrower's completed application for help on one hand, while at the same time moving forward with foreclosure on the other. This was a massive problem where people were literally losing their homes while they were actively trying to work things out. RESPA put a stop to that. So what if a borrower sees a mistake on their monthly statement, or they just need more info about their loan? Well, RESPA gives them a really powerful tool for exactly that kind of situation.
It's called a qualified written request. or a QWR. Now, think of this as more than just a quick email. This is a formal, written request that legally forces the servicer to respond and investigate within very specific timelines.
And this QWI triggers two key deadlines. The first one is simple. The servicer has to acknowledge they even received the letter within 5 business days. It's just a confirmation that lets the borrower know their request is in the system.
But next, and this is the part that really matters, the servicer has 30 business days to actually investigate the borrower's claim and give them a real substantive response. That means they either have to fix the mistake, or they have to write back with a detailed explanation of why they think the account is correct. That 30-day clock is the one to remember.
All right, finally, let's talk about the last line of defense. If all the other options have failed, RESPA still has some really powerful final protections in place before a servicer can even start the foreclosure process.
It usually kicks off with a notice of default, sometimes called a breach letter, and it's typically sent out around the 90-day delinquency mark. This is the formal warning shot. It clearly says how much is owed and gives the borrower one last deadline to pay up before the foreclosure process officially begins.
And this slide right here, this is arguably the most important number in this entire section for your exam. Under federal law, a servicer cannot make that first notice or first filing for foreclosure until the borrower is at least 120 days delinquent. This creates a mandatory cooling-off period, a window of time for the borrower to apply for and be evaluated for all those loss mitigation options we just talked about.
So, as we wrap this up, let's pull it all back to your future role as an MLO. Yeah, knowing these rules is critical for passing your test, but the real value is in how you can use this knowledge. The big question is this: how can you use this information from day one to better prepare your clients, to explain their rights, and to hammer home the importance of calling their servicer at the very first sign of trouble? Because that kind of proactive guidance, well, that's where a great MLO can truly make a world of difference.